All right, I know we're in the week of Thanksgiving and we're thinking about all those casseroles this time of year, right? But I know some of you like to have an Italian style Thanksgiving as well. And this morning, Erica Schlick has a great recipe. Listen to this. It's Italian meatballs with tomato cream sauce, which you know is going to be good. So check this out.
Hi, today I'm going to be showing you how to make paleo Italian style meatballs. Now, most meatball recipes tend to have some breadcrumbs in it, maybe even a little bit of bread, making them not gluten-free and definitely not paleo. So today I'm going to show you how to make a super fluffy version without any of the grains and gluten. And we're going to start with making what I call our meatball sauce. And I have 2 tablespoons of tomato paste here, and we're going to add 1 tablespoon of garlic powder. We've got 1 tablespoon of onion powder. We have a teaspoon of sea salt, and I'm gonna go ahead and use a fork just to combine this a little bit, not too much just yet, but just enough to get the powder mixed in there. And then we're gonna add a 1/4 cup of fresh oregano, and I always like to use fresh herbs whenever possible. And I've got a 1/4 cup of fresh basil as well. We'll just go ahead and use our fork, blend this together a little bit. And now the secret ingredient that is going to keep our meatballs super fluffy is I have 1 egg here that I've gone ahead and beaten ahead of time, and we're going to go ahead and mix that into our tomato herby sauce here. And now we're going to go ahead and mix this into our ground beef. And you can use any kind of ground meat that you want. You can use ground pork, you can use ground chicken. I tend to like beef, so we're going to make these into more of a really meaty sauce today. And so I'm gonna go ahead and combine our herby egg mixture. And at this point, you can either use a fork to kind of blend it in, but to be honest, I really find that using your hands works the best just to really knead the herbs and the egg mixture and the tomato into the meat. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this combined and knead this in here. And then we're gonna start forming our meatballs. Now, to form the meatballs, you can either use a meatball former if you really want to get them perfect, but what I like to do is divide my meat mixture in half, and then I divide it in half again, and divide it in half again, and that starts to give you very even meatball sizes. So with that proportion, we're gonna get about 8 meatballs, and I'm gonna just go ahead and form them with my hand. And I have a cast iron skillet that we're gonna go ahead and bake them in once they are ready to go. So we'll go ahead and get all these formed, pop these in the oven, and then we're gonna go on to make our creamy tomato sauce that is gonna go on top of these as well. And now that our meatballs are formed, we're gonna go ahead and put these in the oven at 350 degrees for about 20 to 25 minutes. And in the meantime, we'll head over to the stovetop and we'll start making our creamy tomato sauce. And now we're gonna go ahead and make our creamy tomato sauce that's gonna go on top of our meatballs, and you can start making this while they're baking. So I have 1 jar of crushed tomatoes, and this is about 18 ounces of tomato. And we're gonna go ahead and add in 1 cup of full fat coconut milk. And we'll go ahead and just give that a quick stir to get that combined to get started. And this is what's gonna be our cream. So this is 100% dairy-free cream sauce. And now we're gonna go ahead and add in our seasoning. So we have 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, we have 1 teaspoon of onion powder, we have 1 teaspoon of fresh oregano, and we have 1 teaspoon of fresh basil, and 1 teaspoon of sea salt. So that's all that's gonna go in this, and we're just gonna go ahead and stir that, make sure it's fully combined in here, and we're just gonna let this sauce simmer for a bit, really let the tomatoes melt in with the coconut milk and get nice and creamy, and let those herbs make this super flavorful. So you'll let it simmer for about 10-15 minutes, and then we will come back and we will blend this with an immersion blender to get it super creamy before we put it back on our meatballs. And our sauce has been simmering for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I've let it cool down just slightly, and now we're gonna get to play with one of my favorite kitchen tools, and I think one of the most underrated kitchen tools. This is an immersion blender, and I love to use this for soups or any sauces that I want to thicken. And so you'll go ahead and put the blender on the end. Just make sure your soup is cooled or your sauce is cooled enough so that you don't splatter yourself and burn yourself, and we're gonna dive in and thicken our sauce. Once we thicken our sauce, we're gonna go ahead and bring our cast iron with our meatballs back over, and we're gonna go ahead and slowly pour our thickened creamy sauce over our meatballs, and then we'll let this simmer one more time. And I like to just do enough just to coat them a little bit, but not completely submerge them. And so just let this heat up, let this sauce simmer just a tad more, maybe about 3 to 5 minutes, and your meatballs will be ready to serve. And that is it. Our meatballs are ready to enjoy. Now, I like to eat these with a side of zucchini noodles, or you can use your favorite gluten-free or grain-free pasta and serve these over them. You can also keep it super simple and just enjoy the sauce of the meat and do a side of sauteed greens. They work great that way too. I really hope you enjoy the recipe. It's one of my favorite, especially for this fall and winter season. And you can get this recipe on my website, thetrailtohealth.com, and you can find more healthy and delicious recipes in my cookbook, Wandering Palate, which is available on my website and Amazon as well.
Thank you, Erica. And of course, you can find out more on that recipe and her cookbook by just heading to our website.